We finally received some good news, ladies and gentlemen, on the Lonzo Ball front after learning that Lonzo was going to undergo surgery that would require him to be reevaluated in 4 to 6 weeks, which wasn't great news in and of itself. But then we got to hear even worse news from Lonzo, in which we heard him be very candid, stating he simply cannot play basketball right now because of the pain in his knee. It was preventing him from being able to jump, run. He even added that it was affecting his daily life and experiencing pain when walking up the stairs. He then also added that the doctors themselves couldn't quite figure out what was going on. All of it just not something you want to hear at all, because it started to sink in that, yeah, Lonzo is likely going to be out for a significant period of time. But then yesterday morning, as first reported by Shams Charania, that it's believed the surgery that was done a couple days ago has enabled the doctors to identify the issue, and there is confidence that he'll be able to return this season. That last sentence, though, wasn't the best news, and that he's expected to miss at least a few months, which I guess in a way kind of what we expected. I talked about that in the prior video a couple days ago, that the earliest I could see him returning to the court was in January, but you always hope that there's this outside chance that the surgery miraculously heals him and he comes just a couple weeks after the start of the regular season. Clearly that is not going to happen. And of course, whenever Lonzo is able to resume basketball activities, it is going to take him a while to get his conditioning back up and just get used to the feel and flow of a basketball game, given how long he's been out. But despite the fact that I just sounded super negative there, this is actually pretty positive news, because the biggest concern before was that the doctors simply could not identify what the problem truly was. And because of that, Lonzo's rehab was just at a standstill, and it wasn't a certainty that they were going to find what the issue was after the surgery, which, if that had happened, what do you even do next? But the fact that the doctors have believed that they've identified the problem that's been causing him pain, they can now diagnose and actually fix the issue, which would relieve Lonzo of his pain and get him back to playing basketball again. And doing so this season, and presumably closer to the second half of the season, it means you get Lonzo back for the playoff push. Now, I said before, the challenge with Lonzo missing any time, even if it's 10 to 15 games, that's still a massive loss for the Bulls, because the margin of error is going to be so slim this season with how stacked the Eastern Conference has become. Every game is going to be so important when it comes to playoff seeding and avoiding that play-in tournament. So many teams in the East improved their roster. Teams that finished below the Bulls in the standings. The Cavs got better, and they're also healthy now, which was a big factor in their fall off at the end of the year, and that was before they added Donovan Mitchell. The Hawks got better by adding another All-Star in DeJounte Murray. The Nets, yes, the Nets got better because Ben Simmons is actually going to play this year. Sure, Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving are getting a little older, and yeah, that locker room might be a bit of a disaster, but those are still superstar level players. And don't rule out the Wizards, who now have a healthy Bradley Beal. Hell, the Pistons are potentially in the mix with the moves that they made, and recently just adding Bogdanovich. Like, the difference between seeds 5 and 9 could be decided upon 2 or 3 games. That's how tight the race is going to be. And so to not have Lonzo even for a handful of games is not ideal for the Bulls. However, there is something to be said about getting a fully healthy and rested Lonzo Ball towards the back half of the season and going into the playoffs, rather than it being the opposite of last year, when you had guys healthy and firing on all cylinders for the first half of the year and then falling off a cliff towards the end of the season. Yes, I would much rather see the Bulls playing their best basketball at the end of the year and just getting off to a slow start, rather than the opposite of what we saw last season. The other thing I will say, and Billy Donovan mentioned this as well to the media after the Bulls practice yesterday, that while yes, the surgery went well, the doctors have claimed to have identified the issue, but you won't actually know if it addresses the pain he's experiencing in his knee until he actually gets back into rehab, and he gets to that point to where before he would ramp up and he would be experiencing that knee pain. You won't really know if progress has been made at all up until that point in his rehab and the pain is no longer there. That will really be the indicator for how soon we can expect him to be back. Until then, really his timeline for the most part is going to be pretty fluid more than anything. You also have to keep in mind that the Bulls also believed that Lonzo's prior surgery last January would address the knee pain that he was having, and they expect him to be back 6 to 8 weeks. And of course, that ended up not being the case, and he still hasn't returned to this day. So just a bit of context. We have been down this road before, but it does sound like this is a bit more encouraging. And look, you also have to feel for Lonzo in this situation. Not being able to play the game that he loves, what he does for a living, and just be dumbfounded as to why the pain won't subside. That's got to be devastating for a player who just feels helpless, as if there's nothing that they can do. What's great is that the team has been very supportive of everything that he's going through, at least what they relayed on media day anyway. Zach said he's been telling Lonzo to take his time with his rehab and that they're there for him. He also said he feels for Lonzo because he knows just how bad he wants to be out there and how hard he works to get back onto the court. DeMar also reiterated the same thing on media day. Like, none of the guys want this. None of the guys on the Bulls roster want this, obviously. But at least you're not getting your heads low, coming up with excuses or writing the season off because they don't know when Lonzo is going to return. No, they're going to hold down the fort, work hard, and be as competitive as they possibly can until Lonzo gets back. And you know, I've heard some people say, well, Lonzo being out, well, yes, that sucks. It's going to impact the team, but the Bulls shouldn't be impacted all that much in the grand scheme of things because everyone else on the roster, at the moment anyway, is healthy. And Lonzo Ball is not one of the Bulls' star players. It's not like he's the number 1 or number 2 option. Well, yes, that is true, and I agree. The Bulls really shouldn't be using Lonzo being out as an excuse for not trying to be better and playing with high expectations. But no, Lonzo is a pretty big hit to the team, no matter how you slice it. From a shooting perspective, being the Bulls' best outside shooter, whether in a catch-and-shoot situation or off of the dribble, which is huge for the Bulls' floor spacing, which is huge for guys like DeMar to be able to operate in the mid-range, and then Vucevic to focus more on his post-up game rather than shooting at threes at a high volume. And aside from the shooting, the Bulls' overall pace for which they operated in transition with Ball was significantly impacted after Lonzo got injured. More specifically, when you look at fast break points, because Lonzo is a great playmaker in transition, the Bulls were 7th in the league in fast break points with Lonzo and 22nd in the league without him. Shout out to Mark K, who actually noted this first on Twitter. And then also points off turnovers because, again, Lonzo is such an effective perimeter defender, but a defender that can quickly turn things around for you in transition offense, forcing turnovers and generating points off of those turnovers, whether scoring himself or assisting in said points. So sure, Lonzo is not one of the Bulls' star players. Yes, he's probably more of a quote-unquote high-level role player, but you're discounting the fact that he's one of these role players that actually has a big enough impact on the court that allows for star players to thrive, and you minimize his importance by simply saying, well, the Bulls have DeMar and Zach. They should still be one of the better teams in the East. DeMar and Zach are much more successful themselves with a guy like Lonzo Ball on the court. And you minimize his play by saying, well, he's just a role player. This shouldn't be as big of a factor as Bulls fans are claiming. Like, all you have to do is take a look at the Bulls' record after Lonzo got injured to see how important he was to this team. Yes, it's going to be nice to have Patrick Williams back for a full season. Yes, it's going to be nice to have Alex Caruso back and healthy. Yes, it'll be great to have Zach at 100%. These are all things the Bulls didn't have in the second half of the season. So I get that obviously those injuries impacted the Bulls and their play last season falling off. But Lonzo Ball and his value is much more important than I think a lot of people give him credit for. So not to have Lonzo until likely January in an environment where the East is going to be the most competitive it has been in arguably 2 decades, if not longer, yeah, that's a big loss for the Bulls. A team that is really trying to maximize their timeline with guys like Vucevic and DeMar getting older and not on long-term contracts. But it's still positive news because it is more likely that we will see Lonzo return at some point this season, whereas just a few days ago, that seemed a little bit in doubt. Love to hear what you guys thought on the news regarding Lonzo Ball. And guys, also, I cannot thank you enough for getting the channel to 30,000 subscribers. It means the world to me. I will be doing a giveaway. I just have to organize everything, and I'll be announcing that in the coming week. Thank you so much for getting us there, guys. And as always, be sure to subscribe if you're a Bulls fan, as I do post daily Bulls content. Thanks again for tuning in, guys, and I'll catch you in the next one.